Mr. Van Bommel, thank you very much for accepting our invitation for this interview. I know you're one of those Dutch politicians who are carefully following the situation in Artsakh. Which opinion do you have about what is going on in the Caucasus region?
I'm extremely worried about the present situation. Things might get out of hand in a blink of an eye. We see that the two large nations that play an important role on the background, Turkey and Russia, are not interested in trying to minimize the conflict. They are letting go the conflict. So I'm really worried about the position of Russia and Turkey because obviously Turkey is supporting Azerbaijan in such a way that the conflict will evolve militarily instead of from a negotiation table, and that's where people should find each other, not in a war. So I'm really worried.
There is a lot of evidence proving the involvement of terrorists from Syria supported by Turkey. President of France has already announced that he has those proofs. As the Turkey is a member of NATO, as the Netherlands, what do you think? What should be the steps of NATO regarding its member Turkey with financing and supporting international terrorism in Caucasus region?
Well, obviously, NATO should warn Turkey not to get involved in this conflict, not to support Azerbaijan militarily, and definitely not support it by helping jihadis support and getting involved in this conflict. We should try and de-escalate, and Turkey is doing the opposite. Turkey is helping Azerbaijan. Turkey is the behavior of Turkey is not minimizing the conflict, it is escalating the conflict, and that is very dangerous. And as far as the involvement of jihadis is concerned, this is totally and utterly unacceptable. And NATO should, of course, warn Turkey that its behavior is a risk to Turkey itself and a risk to NATO as well. Now, the Netherlands, as a loyal NATO partner, should ask the NATO Council to correct Turkey's behavior, not militarily, but politically. The leadership of NATO should address Turkey, A, not to get involved, B, not to support Azerbaijan in a military way, and C, definitely prevent Turkey from helping jihadis getting involved in this conflict. So NATO should act, and NATO is only expressing concern, but it should do more.
What do you think? Why Europe is silent today? European Union spends billions of euros each year on financing humanitarian projects, promoting human rights, highlighting that human life is the most important value. Then why are they still silent? Why they are not urgently implementing sanctions against Turkey and Azerbaijan? They are actually supporting terrorism, these two countries.
The European Union, of course, is most of all an economic union. It does not have any serious military power, and it also has a relation to both countries, to Azerbaijan and to Armenia in its neighborhood policy. Neighborhood policy of the European Union is developed to prevent conflicts from happening. The European Union is involved in many ways in projects, especially in Armenia. So the European Union should within the center of the neighborhood policy should express influence on both countries, on Armenia and on Azerbaijan. It is in the neighborhood, in the vicinity of the European Union where this conflict is happening. So it is in our own interest of the EU to make sure that an effective ceasefire is being reached. that should be the first step, a ceasefire. Now, the European Union as a political body is not so much involved in the debate on the future of Nagorno-Karabakh and the situation that has been there since 1991, the year that Nagorno-Karabakh declared itself independent, not recognized by any country in the EU or even outside the EU. The OSCE, as the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, is involved. The OSCE Minsk Group is the body that is involved in debates on how the future of Nagorno-Karabakh in that region, with an Armenian majority, or one should say an Armenian population in Nagorno-Karabakh, how that should be, how the security and the prosperity and the political difference should be overcome. There has not been a ceasefire effectively since the conflict earlier, from 1988 till 1994, because there was a ceasefire, but there were hostilities as well. There were casualties on both sides, and the ceasefire that has recently been brokered by Russia has not been there for more than a couple of minutes. So I think that the OSCE should take its original role back and should broker a ceasefire, an effective ceasefire, and then the European Union could play a role by sending monitors, because a ceasefire can only be effective if it is monitored by an independent organization, an organization that does not have direct ties to Armenia or to Azerbaijan. The EU could play that role, and the EU has done so before. So it could do the same and send monitors after a ceasefire has been brokered. That should be the first step, an effective, trustworthy ceasefire.
You have traveled to Artsakh in 2015. What was your impression? Can you tell us about your impression as a person?
Yes, a
European person.
Thank you. I was there. I was with the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I was on a meeting in Yerevan, and I took the liberty to travel with an Armenian friend to Artsakh. We toured the whole region and went to different places. First of all, the peace and quietness was overwhelming in Artsakh. Yes, we went to the line of contact and we saw the military from Azerbaijan within a very short distance from the line of contact. I talked to the military and about the risks that were involved for the military to be there at that point. So there was a wide range after the line of contact where no civilians were allowed because it was simply too dangerous. We talked about the incidents, but the general impression of Artsakh was that it was a rather small piece of land where about 150,000 people were living in peace and quiet, where there was practically no crime, and where people were able to survive on their own. However, in Artsakh, there is no oil, there are not many resources. So I was hoping at that time, and we're talking 5 years ago, that Artsakh would open up and that it would be able to accept tourism. Unfortunately, that was at the time not possible, and today it's even further away than we can hope for. I really fear that when this war is continuing and escalating, then we might have a situation of ethnic cleansing, and that Armenians might be driven out of Artsakh, which would be a shame in 2020. We have seen this happening on the Balkans with thousands of people killed. If nothing happens, then the same might happen to Artsakh, and that would be a bloody shame. A ceasefire is a political agreement not to use force. Now that can only be there if Russia and Turkey are engaged in this ceasefire, are supporting the countries to sign an effective ceasefire. If Russia and if Turkey looks the other way, then the conflict will go on and on and on. So yeah, we need Turkey aboard, and NATO might express pressure on Turkey, and we need Russia on board to broker a sincere ceasefire. And only after a ceasefire has been signed, then monitors can step in and monitor the effectiveness of a ceasefire, not before that. You may know that I will be traveling to Armenia next weekend, traveling with the Armenian General Benevolent Union together with delegations from more than 15 European countries to talk to the authorities in Armenia, also to talk to refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh, from Artsakh, to discuss also the reports that have been delivered by the Human Rights Ombudsman from Artsakh. These reports tell horrible stories about the conflict and what is being done to Armenians living in Artsakh. All these stories and all these witness reports we will take back also to the Netherlands, and using them to ask the Dutch Parliament to put more pressure on the Dutch government to take responsibility in relation to this conflict. And that would mean putting pressure on Turkey, putting pressure on Russia, asking for a ceasefire, and making sure that when a ceasefire is reached, that international monitors can go to Nagorno-Karabakh to monitor a ceasefire in its effectiveness. That is what we can do from the Netherlands. We are not in the region ourselves. Yes, there is an embassy now, but of course embassies do not do anything more than report about the situation in the country. So let's hope that we can bring back reports and stories of witnesses that will help us convince the Dutch Parliament that that Dutch politics should not look the other way. It has done so. European politics has looked the other way 100 years ago, and we all know where that led to. So we cannot have a repetition of history. We cannot accept an ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh of Armenians. The Armenian people have suffered too much throughout history.
Thank you. So.
I ask a question about the because the question about the European Parliament putting pressure on the Netherlands to hold Turkey accountable maybe for the actions that they choose to effectively do. At this moment, Turkey has sent 1,200 soldiers to Azerbaijan to aid. How do you see these actions from the European Union, i.e. the Netherlands, towards Turkey and their choices in this conflict?
Well, obviously, the European Union has some leverage towards Turkey. Turkey still is in the waiting room to become a member of the European Union. With its behavior in this conflict, Turkey is, first of all, not doing peace and stability a favor, but it's not doing itself a favor as well, because the European Union will never allow Turkey to become a member if Turkey involves itself in conflict in the periphery of Europe. Also,
terrorism, please mention terrorism. He's really involved in terrorism.
Well, obviously, if it can be proven that Turkey is financing or endorsing terrorism in the region, then again, Turkey will be addressed by the European Union and by NATO. Because if Turkey involves itself in a military conflict with a third country, then NATO will not step in to defend Turkey. We have seen this happening with Syria, when Turkey was involving itself militarily in the conflict. NATO warned that an Article 5 situation where NATO will defend NATO members could not arise of steps that were taken militarily by Turkey itself. So here the same might happen should Turkey involve itself militarily, and it does so apparently by sending troops to Azerbaijan. When Turkey gets involved in a military conflict, then NATO will not be there to help Turkey.